Hello, this is Philly Slam, and I'm kicking off day number 3 of my WrestleMania Weekend. I'm presently driving down I-95 to the Wells Fargo Center to see NXT stand and deliver. Yesterday was a very busy day. First off, the weather in Philly this week has been terrible. It rained like torrential downpours all week. Plus, we had an earthquake here on the entire East Coast. It was cold and overcast yesterday. Today looks like a very nice day. Hopefully today and tomorrow the weather holds up for WrestleMania. Yesterday was like the worst day too, because there were so many shows going on at the same time. It looks like everybody was trying to cram their shows in on Friday. So I had to kind of calculate which shows to try and attend and which ones to skip. I tried going to the Pro Wrestling Revolver House of Glory show, and it was tough because I went there, and it was in a church in the heart of Center City, Philadelphia, where there's no. It's not like in the Center City where City Hall is, where there's parking, garage, stuff like that. It was like in a residential kind of area, so couldn't find any street parking, so I just kind of gave up and didn't go. So I gotta see if there's any results or anything on, if they're streaming it somewhere. I might have to check that out. Instead, I went to the WrestleMania kickoff at the parking lot of the Wells Fargo Center, and it was cold, but it was fun. And from there, at that point, I made at the 7 o'clock hour, there were so many shows going on at the same time. There was an ECW tribute show at the 2300 Arena. There was the Joey Janela Spring Break at Penn's Landing. There was SmackDown at the Wells Fargo Center. Everybody stayed for that. And then and there was Ring of Honor at Temple University. So I decided to go to Temple University for Ring of Honor. And I hate to say it, but that turned out to be a big mistake. I should have just stayed for SmackDown or gone to the Georgia or the ECW show, because I completely miscalculated how long these shows would be. Ring of Honor started at 7, so I figured, okay, SmackDown's from 8 to 10, so I got that, and then they said there's a Hall of Fame kickoff and then Hall of Fame, so I figured I go to Ring of Honor from 7 o'clock, it's a 3-hour show. The only thing I wanted to see was Mark Briscoe, and Mark Briscoe did win the Ring of Honor World Title in the main event. I wanted to see that, and instead the show went for 4 hours, and it was like 10:20, and they just started Dalton Castle versus John Hennigan. He's always changing his last name, Johnny X, and I'm like, I gotta go. So I'm going to miss the Hall of Fame. So I hightailed it out of there. And for those of you that don't know Philadelphia, the way Philadelphia is set up, all the sports arenas are in one area. So you got Wells Fargo Center, where the Sixers and the Flyers play, and you got next door is Lincoln Financial Field, where WrestleMania is. That's where the Eagles play, and then you got Citizens Park, which is where the Phillies play. So it's all in one shared parking lot. You can walk from place to place. 2300 Arena is minutes away. It's like right around the corner. Temple University, Tony Khan runs AEW and Ring of Honor in Temple University, but that's you got to drive through Center City. You got to go up Broad Street. You got to deal with traffic and lights and all that stuff. There's no highway exit. So I moved as quickly as fast as I could from Temple University to Wells Fargo Center. I figured I'd have time because there was a kickoff, and I want to see Paul Herman, obviously. And Paul, I figured he was the main event, so I figured he'd be last or later. No, Paul Herman was first. So luckily, I sat down in my chair just as Paul Herman started speaking. So I was able to see Paul Herman give a tremendous speech. He talked about ECW a lot. I've heard the term Swanson and Rittner. They can't call it the 2300 Arena. WWE doesn't want to call it. They call it the ECW Arena. So it's like that place on the corner of Swanson and Rittner. I've heard that spoken multiple times this weekend from people in WWE, and they're really trying to draw attention to the history, and even with the Ring of Honor show, the history of Ring of Honor and the Murphy Rec Center and all that. CM Punk mentioned the Murphy Rec Center. The ECW arena, the Murphy Rec Center, was mentioned either by name or not by name many times this weekend, and they're really trying to draw attention to the history of wrestling in this area. And I'm gonna give some thoughts on that in a second while I drive. But the Hall of Fame was pretty great. Obviously, there wasn't a lot of star power because it's different now. It's the Triple H, Paul Levesque Hall of Fame now, not the Vince McMahon. I'll get to that in a second too. So it was really Paul Heyman and The Rock were the two big stars that people really popped big for. And The Rock accepted a People's Championship belt from the widow of Muhammad Ali, and then he inducted his grandmother into the Hall of Fame last. And by that point, it was a late night. The Hall of Fame didn't end until 1 a.m. and people were tired, and people had been there since SmackDown. And frankly, I dozed off halfway through I was falling asleep until Thunderbolt Patterson came on, and he woke me up. He was ranting and raving. He started with a prayer, and I don't know how old he is. He seems very elderly, and if you've ever been to a nursing home and been around elderly people, they just talk, and you got to figure out what they're saying. But and I was saying to myself, man, I can't wait to get old, because I'll probably be that guy. I'll be like praying and speaking my mind and not caring. That was fun. But so I got out of there very late, got home very, very late. But it was very fun. But I want to talk a little bit about the history of wrestling in Philadelphia as pertains to WrestleMania and some feelings I've been having. So the first thing I want to say is, when we talk about the history of Philadelphia, they always say, well, ECW. Okay, that's fine. But at the kickoff, there are a lot of wrestlers. There's a generation of wrestlers, both in Ring of Honor, AEW, and WWE, that had got their start, or at least had a lot of their career in Philadelphia in the independent scene, that came after ECW. So you had CM Punk, Sami Zayn, Gunther, Mark Briscoe, of course, Seth Rollins mentioned. There's a Tyler Black chant yesterday at the kickoff. None of them worked at ECW. They came after ECW. There's all Ring of Honor. ECW went out of business in 2001. There are a lot of copycat promotions. There's XPW and 3PW and all these things. And then MLW started off as an ECW copycat. They went on hiatus, came back different. So they've been around. They're currently around, but they had a big gap where they didn't exist. And of course, Ring of Honor was the standout. That was a different promotion. I know there's like Chikara and others, but the two big ones are ECW, and after that, Ring of Honor. And their influence has kind of metastasized, where ECW and the alternative of very cartoon wrestling in WWF and WCW in the 1990s. Paul Heyman mentioned this. Paul Heyman in his speech basically gave the origins of ECW and what it meant, and that it didn't die. It never actually died, in an excellent speech. He very, very, very concise. ECW, first off, it didn't start off as ECW. The first independent wrestling promotion in Philadelphia was called the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance by a guy called Joel Goodhart, with Todd Gordon, who was an unsung hero, in my opinion, of Philadelphia wrestling. The history books have with WWE, they bought ECW, so to their version of history, Paul Heyman started ECW. That's not correct. Tri-State Wrestling Alliance went out of business. Todd Gordon in 1992 started Eastern Championship Wrestling. Todd Gordon is his family owns a very famous pawn shop in Jewelers Row, Philadelphia. He's a local businessman. He had a book that came out I think late last year called Todd is God. He's an unsung hero in the history of pro wrestling and as far as a promoter in Philadelphia. So he started Eastern Championship Wrestling in 1992 with Eddie Gilbert, who's going to be inducted in the Indie Wrestling Hall of Fame So on Sunday, that fell through. Gilbert had problems, and Paul Heyman was brought in to be the booker of ECW in 1993. And then that's when things really took off. It became, Eastern Championship Wrestling was part of the NWA at the time, that the indie version of the NWA after WCW left it. So it was like ECW and Smoky Mountain Wrestling and I don't know who else. But in 1984, they rebranded as Extreme Championship Wrestling. That's the ECW everyone knows today. That was in 1994. Then in 1995, Steve Austin was in ECW as Superstar Steve Austin. And he feuded with the Sandman, who was doing the drinking beers and smoking cigarettes and Singapore canes. And if you take Steve Austin and merge him with the Sandman, you have Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Steve Austin went to WWF. He evolved into Stone Cold Steve Austin in 1996, and you have the Attitude Era kicking off right there. And then by 2001, throughout that time, WWF at the time had a relationship with ECW. ECW went out of business. WWF absorbed it. So ECW, like the ECW influence, like WWF at the time, almost like ate it. It absorbed it, and it changed. It's like a pill. It was like a pill that cartoony WWF took and became the Attitude Era of the late 90s. And on the other hand, you have so if you take that history of Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, which by the way, that's where the first Tri-State Wrestling Alliance is the first place that Mick Foley as Cactus Jack was wrestling hardcore matches in Philadelphia. It was before ECW. So if you take that whole Todd Gordon, Paul Heyman, Tri-State, ECW history as like version 1 of Philadelphia wrestling, and then you version 2, and then you include with that the copycat promotions like the ECW nostalgia shows, like Tommy Dreamer had House of Hardcore. That was that closed shop with the pandemic. But it was very much an ECW, any promotion has the Sandman coming out at the end with, that's, you're doing ECW nostalgia, which is fun. It's okay, but it's nothing, it's not new. You're playing the old hits. There's one called Battleground Championship Wrestling that kind of does that. It's like they do a lot of ECW type stuff. But then the other alternative was, Ring of Honor. And I know you have like Chikara with the very cartoony stuff. But Chikara, I don't think Chikara had the impact. I know some good wrestlers came out of Chikara, but Ring of Honor is the next one, that Philadelphia original promotion that came out of nowhere to really become influential and change. They presented real wrestling, more realistic wrestling, and that influenced AEW. There would not be AEW without Ring of Honor. Tony Khan was a fan of Philadelphia wrestling. He went to ECW. He liked Ring of Honor. The rise to prominence of AEW hurt Ring of Honor a lot. All their talent went to AEW. At one point, I was there when I was there at the last Ring of Honor show at the 2010 Arena before announced a hiatus, and I was like, okay, this company feels like it's dying. And they announced a hiatus, and then next thing you know, Tony Khan bought it to save, Ring of Honor and make it part of AEW. But it's no longer an independent Philadelphia wrestling promotion. I think since Tony Khan has bought Ring of Honor, I think they haven't, there was a pay-per-view yesterday at Temple University, but their pay-per-view before that was in Trenton, New Jersey, in a dump of a building. So they're not going to be in 2300 Arena ever again. So they're just a fourth AEW show with the Ring of Honor logo, and the Ring of Honor brand is a skin suit. And that's how it felt. It felt like when WWE brought back ECW in 2005. They're like, it's not the same. It's not the same. So, there's all that history there. And part of me just wishes they would just announce that Mark Briscoe is the last Ring of Honor World Champion and just close it. But I don't think they're going to do that. So, you have ECW influencing WWE. You have Ring of Honor basically birthing AEW and becoming like an appendage of it. And to me, if you look at that, people talk about wrestling history in Texas, they say, Dallas wrestling and Florida wrestling. But in Philadelphia, they never say Philadelphia wrestling. It's always ECW or Ring of Honor, or no. It's, if you look at, combine them both, it's Philadelphia Wrestling. Philadelphia Wrestling is, in my opinion, the most influential territory. This is a territory of wrestling since 1992, to the 1990s, 91, 92. Philadelphia has influenced the mainstream in ways that they are only now getting to, and they're going to do it again. And it's like, what happens? Where do you go from here? Now, ECW is part of WWE. Ring of Honor is part of AEW. So, will there be a new Philadelphia promotion to influence things in the future, or is WrestleMania 40 it? And what I'm saying is that yesterday at the Hall of Fame, the atmosphere was electric. I was at WrestleMania 15 at the Wells Fargo Center in 1999, and it felt like that kind of crowd. It felt like a mainstream crowd. That crowd is back, and they keep saying yesterday, it's a new era. It's a new era. They're trying to come up with a name for it. They don't have it yet. But Paul Herman, who's not a corporate, kiss up, and the first thing he did in his Hall of Fame speech was he praised Triple H. And Michael Cole said this is the Triple H era at the kickoff. And I'm like, and yesterday, The Rock, in a very passing, matter-of-fact way, brought up Vince McMahon's name. He was booed big time. And I feel that WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia, it's like a reset button for WWE. This is the first WrestleMania post Vince McMahon. They are trying to spit out Vince McMahon and move on and say, this company, it's now, Triple H. And if you remember all those, WrestleMania 1 with Vince McMahon saying, this is WrestleMania, and then those images of Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, I think WrestleMania 40 is like the new WrestleMania 1, where if you replace Vince McMahon with Triple H and Cody Rhodes replacing Hulk Hogan as the All-American champion, and replace Mr. T with The Rock as like the mainstream celebrity guy, I think they're really trying hard this weekend in Philadelphia to hit the reset button, sort of new era. And I think this is one WrestleMania in Philadelphia that's, it's going to be one that they're going to refer to and it'll be seen as an important one, not just like a forgettable one. Like the WrestleMania in Philly, that's the one. It's, things began again in Philly. So anyway, I'm about to pull up, and I'll probably do another video right after this, and talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you.